streaming here and get underway, I suppose, whilst I look at the clock here. Good morning to Lynn as well. All right, good morning, everybody. This is Gulf Harbour Radio, ZMH 286, on a not very pleasant day here. Winter days are back for us, although it's 14 degrees here, which is not too bad. 1001.9. It's a westerly. It's sort of a bit gusty, 10 to 15 knots, that sort of thing. Not all that bad, not like the previous night, but 100% cloud cover and just another grey day. This area, Auckland, does specialise in grey days. We've got a few people underway, and I'll just report because it's interesting, between Fiji and New Caledonia. Villamia are reporting easterly 5, not very much wind. They left yesterday, and the trough came through just after lunch and carried on till midnight, but all is well. It was only up to about 20 knots. So that's dropped back now, and they're progressing towards New Caledonia. And I just should warn them that the further south you go, the colder it will get. And up there at Vanua Balabu, good morning to Mesatoy. It's quite a bit of scattered cumulus around, and a very pleasant 24 degrees. And I wonder how these people are getting on in Vanuatu, because there was another earthquake there yesterday, 6.5 earthquake again, so near Ambrym, and I know a lot of people are gathering for the Return to the Roots festival, so you better make sure that the cupboard doors are closed, and when you hear something strange in the water, you'll know what it is. It's getting quite shaky up there. So anyway, it looks pretty good weather in that part of the world, and Rubicon reporting clear skies, and that's what it looks like. The only ones in Vanuatu that are in trouble are the ones right down the bottom. Anyway, let's get on to some news, but I'll do a pause in case there's anybody with anything urgent. Fiji seems to be coming in better today, which is good. We don't know about Tonga. We're really having troubles with Tonga at the moment. And I was just commenting to Graham that it would be easier if we got up here an hour earlier, but there's been no volunteers for that, so we'll continue at the same time. All right, a bit of news. The US Army and Marines, in fact the entire US military, and I know we've got a few ex-military folk out there, are going to get healthy at chow next month. They have found out from their surveys that over 17%, 17%, are obese in the ranks, and they have looked at the needs of the various troops. For example, the Marines need a lot of energy, and the Air Force need sort of anti-inflammatory type food, because they have lots of jolts in the joints, so they need things like avocados and berries, whereas the Army and Marines need lower fat meats, such as bison meat. Never have tasted bison meat, but evidently it's lower fat. And they need a lot more fish and vegetables on the menu. And it's interesting because David and I have just finished a rather traumatic series, but superb series on the Vietnam actually, not just the American War, but the rest of it. Very good historical program that was done last year, very long. It was about 11 sessions of about almost 2 hours each. But we commented that they all look quite thin and lean and mean, whereas troops these days are more bulked up. And one of the reasons David reckons is that in his day you gave your plate to the guys behind the food, and they plopped it on, whereas now you choose your own. So the choices are going to be a lot more healthier for them now, in the hope of getting them a little bit leaner. Moving on and staying with the United States, actually, I sort of avoided this topic whilst all the drama was going on, but there have been some results now from the big trials that were going on. Paul Manafort, who was Mr. Trump's former campaign manager, has been found guilty by jury on about 8 counts. They couldn't agree on the others, but the 8 counts that he's been found guilty of will put him away for 80 years. So he's going to have trouble spending, I think he's put away about 65 million that they know about, 20 million also from the Ukraine, which of course linked him to the whole Russian business. So that was a bit major drama. And also on the same day, but in a different part of the country, Michael Cohen, Trump's attack dog, or previous attack dog, he has been found guilty of tax frauds. But the problem with him is that he has accused Trump of directing his breaking the law. So that brings the number of Trump associates and former members of his cabinet to 5. So they're calling him anyway. So that's kind of a big drama in America for Mr. Trump, but he's boxing on, as is Mr. Turnbull in Australia, who has the sharks circling rather closely. They say that there will be another attack before the week end, so that will be interesting to see what happens in Australia. Hawaii. Well, we're into America today, aren't we? Hawaii is bracing itself for Hurricane Lane. It's now a Category 5 hurricane heading towards Hawaii. So lots of rain everywhere except for New South Wales in Australia, which is still suffering major drought problems. And closer to home even further, the Auckland Bridge. I'm not sure whether I mentioned that, but there had been some comments and letters in the paper about the fact that the clip-ons have changed sort of direction from when they were first put up. They have sagged, and people had noted that they had sagged. But this morning, one person from the Auckland, whatever they were that was responsible, said that the reason that they have dropped is that about 8 years ago they added about 900 tons of steel, and these were welded and bolted onto the clip-ons, clip-on extensions, to increase the load carrying capacity, and that's what actually caused the drop, not something that was going to need to be worried about. Needless to say, we have driven on the main part of the bridge since all this started. But sometimes you don't get a choice, you end up where you end up. But anyway, there is supposedly no problem with the Auckland Harbour Bridge. That's about as far as I've got today, because I was a little bit later up since I had to go out to Warkworth to a meeting last night. So that's it for the news. In fact, there's not an awful lot of news to report that's going on in the world, apart from what I've just mentioned. So is there anybody with anything specific? I would like to see if we are hearing anything from Tonga. Could anyone just give me a signal report from Tonga?
Maybe somebody.
We think that there's somebody there, but I would need a relay. And that's what I keep meaning to mention, folks. We do this to help all of you. And if you hear somebody in Tonga that's not getting through, it would be really nice if you could just do a relay for us so that we can respond to any questions. But we know that one boat is trying to get through to Nui, and we know that iCandy has usually got a good signal because he sometimes comes in on the Hamnet, but there is a definite problem with Tonga this year. Usually it's New Caledonia that we have problems with, but everything has shifted a little bit. So we'll just ask you to give a relay. Is there any relays for the boat that we might have heard from Tonga?
Hello, Irene.
Yeah, good morning, Trevor. Go ahead.
iCandy was calling you.
Oh, thank you for that. Well, Andrew, it shows you that we can't hear you, which is interesting. So we'll just have to accept the fact that Tonga is not coming through with the power that you guys have got on the boat. And I'm hoping that you might hear us with our about 400 watts. iCandy, are you copying Gulf Harbour Radio? Please say one thing or the other, and Wilhelmine will relay.
Yeah, ring your neighbour, Tricia. He's got a good copy on you.
Oh, thank you for that, Andrea. She came up a little bit then, but I wouldn't have been able to work it out. All right, and I'm not sure what's happening with streaming because it doesn't look as if anybody is there, but everything looks good again, so I'm not sure what's going on there, but hopefully you can hear us and on the radio, and I'm going to pass the microphone. Is there anybody else before I do that? Yes, there was a lady's voice, and I certainly can read you, but I missed the vote. Could you call again? Okay, there was two there, and Haven's coming through well. Haven, where are you? Over. Yes, I've got you at 2016 and 17347 East. Over. Okay, heading to Southport. Well, you've got a few miles to go, that's for sure. We might be hearing you for a while. That's a long way to go, but it sounds like very pleasant conditions at the moment. Southeast less than 10. You probably would prefer a bit more on your course, but that's pretty decent conditions. So a relaxing day for you. Over. Oh, that's good. So you had a pretty good night of sailing. All right, got you there. There was a male voice in behind Haven. Who was that? Okay, stand by, Harry. I've got Gracious Lady. How's your passage going? Go ahead. And Harry, if you wouldn't mind if you could hear them taking it down because they're quite light. Hillary, go ahead. Okay, I think I heard 15 knots from the southeast, but I have you, I'll just go quickly, 18 and 165. I've got the rest, 260 and 7.5 knots. Boy, you're moving along. Did I get the wind speed right? 1.5 from the southeast, over? Okay, that sounds good. Oh, everyone's having a pretty decent time of it out there today, so that's good. And Malua. I'll clear with you, Hillary. Malua.
Good morning, Patricia. I could not hear Gracious Lady or the one heading to Oz this morning. I hear my family and you as good as up with me.
Okay, so it's a much nicer day in Newcastle, except if you're at the very top, doesn't look as nice as what you've got it down there. 1019 on the dial for the barometer. All right, thank you for that, and you'll be looking at getting away through that murky stuff. All right, perhaps you could have a party with Philomene in the middle there. All right, I'm going to pass the microphone. It's the bewitching hour of 7:30 if you're on New Zealand time, 19:30 if you're on UTC time. Here's David.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, that army thing was interesting. About the food. Give you some history. When I was in Vietnam in 1968, we weren't fat. We had out in the field sea rations, and I was really the odd one because I was the only one that liked the canned eggs. And we used to get cigarettes and candy and all kinds of stuff in our packs, and I would trade them. People thought I was totally out of my mind. And that was the start of the fried ration, the LRPs, the patrol rations, the precursors of what the camping people used. You had hot water and whatnot. They were disgusting. All right, good morning, and our 500 millibar trough is still with us over New Zealand. Boy, it's not looking good out there right now. We've got numerous areas of vorticity in this trough, and on either side of the trough, on either side of New Zealand, is a ridge, a 500 millibar ridge. Now, the result of all of this upper air activity still shows numerous low centers certainly over and around New Zealand, with multiple troughs and fronts, as you would expect. And one of the low centers now has scooted a little bit east, and this is the one that's pushing the frontal band and associated trough toward Tonga, Fiji, Vanuatu, and so forth. Now, the cold front itself continues eastward at a bit of a slant, but around 25 south, it morphs into a trough. In other words, what we talked about the other day, we've got minimal temperature difference on either side of the band of cloud, and therefore it's drawn as a trough. It also starts to disassociate itself from the main frontal band, and it tries to hang about the islands, whereas the actual cold front continues east. And this is very typical. I'm not giving you exactly a lesson, but this is very common up in the tropics. And when these troughs start to go hang more or less east-west and hang around for a few days, that's when you've got miserable weather for a while. And oftentimes, especially New Zealand Met Service likes to call them quasi-stationary fronts, whereas Fiji always calls them troughs. So it's a matter of local lingo, if you will, at that point. So tomorrow, Friday, what's happening? The surface high under one of the 500 ridges moves further into the Tasman, and it's going to push a ridge toward the islands. Now, the isobars are going to start to tighten up south of Newcastle first, so we can expect 15 to 20 knots from the southeast as a result of that. And by Saturday, the high, still in the Tasman, builds to around 1027 millibars. So now it's starting to get strong. And by Sunday, it's going to lie just to the west of New Zealand. And as is typical, on the northwest corner, we'll see a forward dip as a trough forms up there. And that is going to affect the Coral Sea and stretch to New Caledonia. So by Monday, the 27th, New Cal is going to be fully involved in this trough. And on Monday, the high is going to be directly over New Zealand, so we should have some pretty nice weather here. However, east of Sydney, we've got a new depression forming, and that's going to send a cold front north. That's going to link up with the trough that's over New Caledonia, and that whole thing is probably going to extend to the Solomons. Now, Fiji and Tonga are going to be on the fringe of the high, on the ridge more or less, and the winds are going to pick up at that point. So nice and fresh, and I would say 20 knots in the mean, so you could have higher gusts than that. So that's going to be, well, not a week from now, actually not too long from now, but anyhow, you'll have that to look forward to if you like fresh winds. Over to Tonga, now we find, well, it's complicated in Tonga. I'll have to rely on imagery mostly. I find there's a trough still barely to the southwest of Tongatapu. I'm looking at it right now on the computer. The second trough, the one we talked about yesterday, is sort of over the Hapais and Vavau, but it's breaking up. So I wouldn't be surprised that you've got quite a bit of sun in there. But there can be some cloudy periods, and you can get some showers out of it as well. So conditions this morning, these are actuals from the airport. In Vavau, they reported cloudy northeast winds 10 knots, and the barometer, if you want to check yours, 1015. And the Hapais, partly cloudy northeast 10, and barometer 1017. Now, right around lunch, maybe before lunch, I see the winds continuing to the northeast, from the northeast, about 15 to 20, but they're going to start to ease. I would say maybe about 15. And tomorrow also northeast winds, and that direction indicates that they're starting to feed that trough to the south. But lighter air, about 10 to 15, the yacht that wants to get to Niue, that is an opportunity to make your break. It's not too often that you get a day or two of these sort of winds. Otherwise, it's a terrible beat getting to Niue. Fiji is pretty lucky at the moment. The active trough has slipped south this morning, so the islands are mostly fine. Winds easterly quadrant, they're a bit all over, 10 to 15 knots, shifting around a bit more by lunch we should see east, northeast, or east, depending upon where you are. And possibly even lighter winds around dinner time. We'll call it about 10 knots in that range. So Friday now, well, here we go again. It looks like the trough says, nope, I think I like it better in Fiji. So it may very well revisit. In other words, it may start to head north again. The winds northeast over the Lau area, and they're going to be fairly light, possibly variable, and that'll be in the central parts as well. But southeast winds further to the west, and in other words, the Muscat Cove, Misawas area. So all these winds look to be fairly light, except if you do get some rain, then of course you're going to have gusts due to that. But that's what it's looking like. It's a bit complicated, I think, next day or so there. Vanuatu is not very lucky, at least the southern half isn't, as Patricia mentioned. That's where the trough lies. Imagery shows this, so it looks like the northern half is mostly fine at the moment, but the trough may lift a little bit, so don't take all of this to the bank. Converging winds, though, southeast from Anisham to Port Vila, but it looks like east to northeast, north of there. So they're going to clash, and they're going to support the trough. Now tomorrow looks like southeast for most of the group, and well, it looks like it could wind up being up to 20 knots. So that's because we've got that high coming on that's starting to get stronger, and of course on the periphery of the high you've got stronger winds. So that's what may happen. A little bit lighter though for Anisham and Santo, oddly enough. The wind is a little bit higher in the central areas, so we'll see if that really happens. New Caledonia's northern side, as Patricia also said, is very, very close to the south edge of the trough. Imagery is, well, it's right now it's showing it over the northern part of Grande Terre. It's actually slipped down a little bit more as we've been talking. However, the lagoon looks still clear. There's a few clouds moving in, off and on. They come, they go. So the winds in the lagoon, I think, are going to be fairly light. Southerlies around 10 knots by this afternoon. And Friday, still light air, I think. And the clouds will start to pick up a little bit on Friday. Saturday, I think we'll start to see southeast 15 to 20. And on Sunday, we're going to see the edge of the trough that we've been discussing. Easterlies about 15 to 20, and we're going to have rainy periods. And on Monday, we should experience the full-on trough over New Caledonia. So Villamy is heading that way, and hopefully we'll be in on Sunday and beat most of this in. At least the winds are going to be in a good direction for that trip, and they should pick up for that trip as well. I think you'll have 15 to 20 knots out of the southeast. So nice trade winds, actually. Within those trades, though, there's going to be convective activity, so don't be surprised to see some cloud, particularly at night, and get some squally periods at that. But you should scoot along pretty good. You've got a fast boat, so hopefully you'll be there on Sunday. And that's it for me. Any questions or comments, feel free. And here is Leadfoot.
I didn't say that. Well, I was just sitting here looking at the website for the Fleet, well, I call it Fleet Week, the Regatta Week for Fiji at Muscat Cove. That's coming up in September. Is there anybody with anything on any topic? Call now. I've got a funny something going on with, I've actually had trouble all morning with the internet. I don't think they're behaving very well today. All right, I think I heard something, but it might have been my imagination. If you have something, please come again with your boat name a couple of times. Nothing heard. Alrighty, if there are no relays or nothing heard by anybody else, we will leave the frequency to you and get back to our miserable day here. The wind has come up a bit, but that's about it. It's just grey. Alright, cheers everybody, and we will be back again tomorrow, same time, same place. For those of you who are out at sea, enjoy your day, and hopefully all will continue well. Gulf Harbour Radio is clearing the frequency. It's all yours.